Hello everyone, myself Dr. Madhuri from Government Degree College for Women Begumpet. Today's topic is general properties of amino acids and proteins. We'll look at the overview of contents of this presentation. We'll be first try to understand the concept of amino acids, and then we'll look for protein formation, 3D shape of proteins, denaturation of proteins, and examples of biologically important proteins. So overall, we'll be covering both amino acids and proteins in this session. So amino acids, they are the building blocks of proteins. Okay, as a wall is made of bricks, proteins are made of amino acids, and these proteins, they are generally called as structural and functional units of our bodies. So what these proteins are doing, they are helping us in transporting oxygen through blood, and they are the primary components of skin and muscle, and they work as defense against infection. For example, antibodies are proteins, and the serum proteins are also there. And next function is they are serving as enzymes, okay, or biological catalysts. Biological catalyst, basically, catalyst means something which can speed up the reaction. So these enzymes are acting as biological catalysts, and these enzymes are in turn made of proteins. Next, they also control the metabolism of hormones. So in this way, they are serving many functions in our body. Next, so proteins are polymers of amino acids covalently bonded in specific sequences. As we have discussed, proteins are made of amino acids, right? Amino acids are joined in a particular sequence. So that sequence is more important for the functioning of the protein. And there are 20 commonly occurring amino acids. So as we said, proteins are made of amino acids. So how many types of amino acids are there? There are 20 types of common amino acids, which we can see in many proteins which are present in the nature. So the order of amino acids is more important in the functioning of a protein. When amino acids are covalently linked to one another, this can twist and fold in the unique form 3D structure that has a specific function. So after the amino acids are joined to each other in a protein, right, then it has to undergo some modification or twisting or turning, right, or folding has to happen in order to convert this simple polypeptide into a functional protein or 3D structure. Next, so coming to the amino acids now, as we have discussed, first we let us know why this name amino acid. Amino acid name is due to presence of both groups, functional groups in that molecule, that is amino group and acid group. Okay, amino group and carboxylic acid groups are present in the amino acids. That is why it is called as amino acid, right? And these functional groups are bonded to central carbon atom. So amino group and carboxylic acid, where they are present, they are bonded to a central carbon atom. This carbon atom is called as chiral carbon or as alpha carbon. Okay, chiral carbon, because four different groups are attached to the central carbon, then it is called as chiral carbon. Or if it is a first carbon, central carbon, it is called as alpha carbon, and the amino acids are called as alpha amino acids. Now, alpha carbon is also bonded to hydrogen atom and a large side chain. This side chain is unique for each amino acid. Now, in this picture, we can see this is the central carbon or the alpha carbon. Okay, so as we have discussed, there should be two groups. One is amino group and the other one is carboxylic group. This is the amino group NH3 plus, and this is the carboxylic group COO minus. Okay, in addition to these groups, when these two groups are present, we are calling it as, we can call it as amino acid, right? Apart from these two, there will be an hydrogen attached to this alpha carbon along with the R or alkyl side chain. Okay, so what is this R? This R is unique for different amino acids. Different, how many amino acids are there? 20 amino acids. So in 20 amino acids, 20 types of alkyl side chain can be seen. So these amino acids are differing mainly based on this R chain. Next, alpha carbon on all amino acids except glycine is a chiral carbon. Okay, so glycine, in glycine in place of R there is hydrogen. Okay, so two groups will be similar. So in glycine there is no chiral carbon except glycine in all the amino acids. Means in the rest of 19 amino acids, the central carbon, that is alpha carbon, is also called as chiral carbon. When it is called as chiral carbon, when four different groups are attached to the central carbon, then only it is called as chiral carbon. So central carbon can be all called as alpha carbon as well as chiral carbon. Now, an amino acid with a chiral center has two forms called enantiomers, which are non-superimposable mirror images. Okay, so these amino acid has two forms. Okay, they are called as enantiomers. So what are enantiomers? They are non-superimposable mirror images. Okay, if we see ourselves in the mirror, our right hand will be on the left, our right side will be on the left, and our left side will be on the right side of the mirror. So same thing, these isomers of amino acid will be non-imposable, non-superimposable mirror images. When drawing the Fischer projection, carboxylate group is at the top of the structure and side chain is at the bottom. The protonated amino group can be on the left side and right hand side of the structure. So when we draw the diagram of amino acid by Fischer projection, we will be usually getting carboxylic acid group on the top and arginine at the bottom, and protonated amino group can be on the left hand side. If the amino group is on the left side, it is called as L form, and if it is on the right side, we call it as D form. So this is one of the important point we have to remember in amino acid. If amino group is on the left side, is called as, in Fischer projection um, diagram, if it is on the left side, it is called as L form, and if it is on the right side, it can be called as D form. So just remember, there are two forms, L form and D form. In L form, amino group is on the left side, and in D form, amino group is on the right side. So this is the Fischer projection diagram. See, here you can understand in a better fashion. This is amino group, this is on the left side, so it is L amino acid. If it is on the right side, it is D amino acid. This is one of the major um, point to be remembered. It is an important point to be remembered. So L amino acids are the building blocks for proteins. Some D amino acids occur in nature but not in proteins. So whatever we have many number of proteins in nature. Okay, many number of proteins in our body also, right? So whatever proteins are there, mostly L amino acids can be seen in the proteins. Okay, but D amino acid, which is here, these are very rarely present in nature. They are present in nature, but mostly they are not present in proteins. So proteins are mostly having L amino acid. Next, in amino acids, R group gives each amino acid its unique identity and characteristics. As we have discussed before, R group, which is present in the amino acid, it is unique for each amino acid. We are having 20 amino acids, so 20 different R groups will be there. There are 9 different families of organic compounds represented in the structures of different amino acids. So these are the families of organic compounds which can be seen in R group or R chain of a different amino acid. So we can see alkane or aromatics, benzene ring, or ethers, alcohol, phenol, thiol, amide, carboxylic acids, amines, all we can see in our side chain of different amino acids. Now, the functional groups divide the amino acids into following four categories. So, just now we have seen 20 amino acids are differing in R side chain. Okay, so based on the R side chain or alkyl chain, these amino acids can be divided into four categories. They are non-polar, polar, acidic, and basic amino acids. Non-polar, it consists of 9 amino acids. Polar consists of 6 amino acids. Acidic, only 2 are there. Basic, there are 3 amino acids. So let us study in detail about these different types of amino acids. There are, among these 20 amino acids, there are 10 amino acids that are essential because they cannot be synthesized in human body and must be obtained in the diet. So this is an important bit to be remembered. What are essential amino acids? Essential amino acids are those amino acids which cannot be synthesized by human body. That is why we have to take them in our diet. That is why we are calling them as essential amino acids. Rest of the amino acids can be synthesized by our body. So there are around 10 amino acids which are essential to our body. So these 10 essential amino acids are valine, leucine, isoleucine, phenylalanine, methionine, tryptophan, threonine, histidine, lysine, and arginine. So we have to prefer those foods which can have these kind of amino acids, this profile of amino acids. So two of these amino acids, arginine and histidine, are essential in children but not adults. So out of these 10 amino acids, arginine and histidine are not synthesized by children but they are synthesized by adults. So we need to give them in food for children, but it is not required for adults. Non-essential amino acids can be synthesized in body from essential amino acids. If we give essential amino acids, non-essential, rest of the 10 to 12 non-essential amino acids can be synthesized in the body due to biochemical reactions. Now, proteins that contain all the essential amino acids are called complete proteins. Okay, if they are having all 10 amino acids, they can be called as complete proteins. For example, soya bean and most proteins found in animal products are complete proteins. Okay, so if we want to give full nutrition, right, we have to prefer complete proteins. Okay, these complete proteins are mostly found in animal products and also in soya bean. Some plant proteins are incomplete proteins because they lack one or more essential amino acid. So when we are calling complete proteins to be containing all the essential amino acids, in the same way, when one or two amino acids are lacking in a particular protein, we have to call them as incomplete proteins, which are plant proteins. These complete proteins can be obtained by combining foods like rice and beans. So usually we'll be taking different types of foods in combination. So with this combination like rice and beans also, the essential amino acids can be covered. The structure of amino acids, including side chains, names, functional groups, and abbreviations, are shown in the slide. Okay, so these are the 20 amino acids and their structures. Okay, first these are non-polar amino acids. Non-polar amino acid means they are not um, compatible with water. Okay, non-polar means they are not compatible with water. First is glycine. See, in just I'm revising one point here. Glycine is not having chiral carbon here. Okay, this is the only amino acid which is not having chiral carbon. Why? When it is called as a chiral carbon, central carbon, when it is attached to four different groups, then only it can be called as chiral carbon. But here on both sides hydrogen is there, so that is why here the central carbon cannot be called as chiral carbon. Next amino acid is alanine. Here R group is alkyl methyl group, and here next is valine, leucine, isoleucine, phenylalanine, methionine, proline, and tryptophan. All these are non-polar amino acids. Coming to polar amino acids, example serine, threonine, tyrosine, cysteine, asparagine, and glutamine. Next, acidic amino acids, aspartic acid and glutamic acid. Coming to basic amino acids, histidine, lysine, and arginine. So these are the different types of amino acids based on the categorization, like polar, non-polar, acidic, and basic. Four categories we have seen their structures and their scientific names. Next, so the same thing in an more clear way. There are two classifications for amino acids based on the side chain: non-polar amino acids, polar amino acids, which are further divided into neutral amino acid, acidic, and basic. Now, what are non-polar amino acids? Side chains contain entirely of carbon and hydrogen. So, in the side chain or R group, there is only carbon and hydrogen atoms. So, when these carbon hydrogen bonds are there, these bonds are non-polar. Usually, they are non-polar. So, compounds which are composed of this carbon and hydrogen, they will be non-polar and non-hydrophobic. Sorry, non-polar and hydrophobic. Non-polar means they cannot interact with water. Even hydrophobic means they cannot interact with water. Hydro means water, phobic means fear. Water fearing molecules, non-polar molecules. Next, what are polar amino acids? They contain functional groups such as hydroxyl group, amide group, etc. So these side chains can form hydrogen bonds with water. So due to presence of these functional groups such as hydroxyl group or amide group, they are able to form bonding with the hydrogen bonding with the water. And side chains are hydrophilic, as due to presence of these groups they are hydrophilic or water living compounds. An exception is cysteine, which does not form hydrogen bonds. So there is an exception for this polar amino acids, that is cysteine. Due to even after presence of such groups, it is not um, hydrophilic, it is a hydrophobic, it is not able to form bonds with the water. So polar acidic and basic amino acids have charged side chains that can form ion dipole interactions with water. They are more polar than those classified as polar neutral. So in polar category there are acidic and basic amino acids also. They are more interacting with water. When now, coming to protein formation, how the protein is formed. First, basic step for protein formation is formation of a polypeptide bond between two amino acids. Here, when two amino acids condense, a dipeptide is formed. Right. Two amino acids, first there should be a peptide bond formation between two amino acids. So how this peptide bond is formed? There will be a carboxylate ion of one amino acid reacts with the protonated amine of a second amino acid. Okay, carboxylate ion means COO minus, and protonated amine means NH3 plus. So due to this plus and minus charges, they are more readily interacting with the water, and there can be a bond formation here. So in this interaction, a water molecule is lost and an amide functional group is formed. An amide bond is formed between two amino acids. There is a peptide bond formed between COO minus and NH3 plus, losing a water molecule. In this we can see in a clear way this reaction. This is a carboxylate ion, this is a amine group, protonated amine group. When these two molecules come together, we will be losing oxygen from carboxylate ion and H2 plus amine group, releasing one water molecule here and forming a peptide bond between these two groups or these two amino acids. Example here, we can see alanine and valine. When they are coming together, there is a peptide bond formation, losing one water molecule. continuation of this protein formation. The product formed during the condensation is known as a dipeptide, which is represented as alanine and valine, or A or AV. Okay, if we go back, this is first amino acid is alanine and second amino acid is valine. Okay, when the bond is formed between these two amino acids, that bond can be denoted when we are writing the sequence of amino acids in a protein. We have to show this peptide bond by writing a hyphen between two amino acids. Okay, like for alanine, we need not write the full name of alanine, we can write ALA, and for valine we can write VAL. This is the short form of these two amino acids. So these two amino acids are bonded by a hyphen, or even another short forms are there, alphabetical short forms, A for alanine and V for valine. AV if we write, it is also understood that there is a peptide bond between alanine and valine. Now, in this dipeptide, alanine is called the N-terminus because it has an unreacted alpha amino group. Here, again, we have to go back to the diagram. So, this is the first amino acid, alanine. Okay, in this alanine, if you can see, there is a amino group. Okay, free amino group is there. So this terminus, this amino acid is called as N terminus. Okay, because free amino group is there, and as here there is free carboxyl group, this amino acid should be called as C terminus. Okay, here we are seeing the example of only two amino acids. It can be a set of many 10 amino acids or 100 amino acids, whatever sequence you take, there will be one amino acid at left side and one amino acid at right end also. So whatever amino acid which is present at the left end, it will be having free amino group. So that amino acid can be called as N terminus, and the amino acid which is present at the right side end will have free carboxyl group. It can be called as C terminus. So now we have understood what is N terminus and what is C terminus. If amino acid is having free amino group, it should be called as N terminus, and if it is having free carboxyl group, then it should be called as C terminus. Now, structures are always written from N terminus to C terminus. So, whenever we are writing the sequence of amino acids in a protein, always we have to follow a direction. Which direction we have to follow? N direction to C direction. N terminus to C terminus. Okay, always N terminus to C terminus. Two amino acids can combine in two ways, forming two different dipeptides. Now we can see the example here. Alanine and valine are combining. If we are combining these two amino acids, okay, they can combine with each other in two forms. One form is first alanine, then valine. Alanine on left side and valine on the right side, or another combination is valine on the left side and alanine on the right side. So these are the two possible combinations of these two amino acids. They are structural isomers and they have different properties. These two, as you can see, there are only two amino acids in each dipeptide, right? But they are on different direction. On N terminus here alanine is there, whereas here valine is there. On C terminal here valine is there, and here alanine is there. So their structure is different, their properties are also different. Next, so the bond present between alanine and valine is called as peptide bond, and these two forms are not the same. Okay, only two amino acids are there. Here we are not seeing the example of hundreds or thousands amino acids. Here we are considering only two amino acids which are joined in a different fashion, but we can say definitely these two compounds are not the same, because here N terminus is different and here N terminus is different, and here in both the cases C terminus is also different. So, peptides formed in the condensation of three amino acids are called as tripeptides. Four amino acids are tetrapeptides, five amino acids are pentapeptide. So whatever be the number of amino acids are there, based on that number, we are giving some name to that peptide. If it is having 3 amino acids, we have to call it as tripeptide. If it is having 4 amino acids, tetrapeptide. 5 amino acids, pentapeptide, etc. Next, so if it is having more than 5 or 10 amino acids, poly, many amino acids, many peptide bonds, then we have to call it as a polypeptide. And the number of amino acids increases in a polypeptide, in a protein, then we have to call it as a polypeptide. So a biologically active polypeptide consists of 50 or more amino acids is referred to as protein. So when we can call a particular biological molecule or biomolecule as a protein, when we can call a particular biomolecule as a protein is when it is having 50 or more amino acids. Okay, so in a chain of polypeptide, if it is having more than 50 amino acids, we can call it as protein. Now, coming to the 3D structure of proteins, peptides and proteins have 3D shapes or structures. Okay, from in the first slide itself, we have discussed the sequence of amino acids cannot do anything after the what do you say, in protein synthesis. After the amino acids are joined in a particular sequence, that polypeptide has to undergo some changes. It has to fold, it has to twist, it has to turn, right? It has to form some bonds, right? Additional bonding should be there, then only it can transform into a functional protein. So since the simplest dipeptide contains many atoms, it would be impossible to predict its shape by CPR as was done with simple organic molecules. So for simple dipeptide we cannot predict the shape. So proteins have 4 levels of structure. One is primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary. So let us uh, learn about these structures one by one. Coming to the first one, primary structure. Okay, here primary structure means it is nothing but the sequence of amino acids. That's it. Okay, the order of sequence of amino acids joined together by peptide bond is called as primary structure, or in other words, as in translation, first different amino acids should be joined by peptide bonds. The only chain of these amino acids linked linearly by peptide bonds can be called as a primary structure. No other change in that chain. Okay. Next, the order of sequence of amino acids is important. As we have discussed earlier, the sequence of amino acids is more important in determining the either the structure or function of a protein. Arranging amino acids in different order creates a polypeptide or protein that has no longer the same function as the initial sequence of amino acids. So, why we are saying many times that the sequence of amino acids is important? What happens if we change the sequence? If we change the sequence of a single amino acid, right, then that protein won't be similar to the earlier protein. Definitely this protein will differ from the normal protein which has to be synthesized. So such is the important role played by the sequence of amino acids. So definitely the sequence is more important in a polypeptide chain. So for example, 8 amino acid chain peptide we are taking. This is the example. This is peptide angiotensin 2, okay, which is involved in normal blood pressure regulation in humans. Okay, so there is a protein angiotensin 2. It is helping in regulation of blood pressure in humans. This is the sequence. Okay, so what is the sequence? Aspartic acid, arginine, valine, tyrosine, isoleucine, histidine, proline, and phenylalanine. Any other order of amino acids in this peptide would result in peptide that would not function as angiotensin 2. So if we change the sequence of even if a single amino acid sequence is changed or removed or added, whatever be the change, this uh, resulting protein won't be the same as this angiotensin or a functional angiotensin, which can help in regulation of blood pressure in humans. Now, so that was the primary structure, and that was the significance of primary structure or the sequence of amino acid. Now coming to the second level, that is secondary structure. Secondary structure of a protein describes repeating patterns of structure within the 3D structure of a protein. Okay, so if you take a functional protein, there will be some repeating structures. There will be some repeating structures or repeating patterns. Okay, so that patterns can be studied under this secondary structure. So these repeating patterns can be of two types. One is alpha helix and the other one is beta pleated sheet. Okay, so secondary structure is of two types. One is alpha helix and the other one is beta pleated sheet. Alpha helix is a coiled structure, and much like coil of a telephone cord, it is a right-handed coil. As we have seen telephone wire, right, it will be coiled in a right-handed coiling. Okay, so alpha helix is also uh, a secondary structure of protein which which will resemble the telephone cord. Then this coil is stabilized by hydrogen bonds between the carbonyl oxygen of one atom amino acid and the amino group or hydrogen of amino group of another amino acid located four amino acids from its primary structure. Okay, this we can understand by seeing a picture. Okay, but here we can understand that in the sequence of amino acids there will be bonding between first amino acid and fourth amino acid. Okay, the bonding will be between carbonyl oxygen of first amino acid and hydrogen of amino group of fourth amino acid. The coil is able to stretch and recoil and is a strong structure. So this coil alpha helix structure is a stretchable and it can undergo recoiling. The side chains project outwards from the axis of the helix. If from the center of the axis, the side chains will be projecting outwards. This is the alpha helix. If you can see, this is the right-handed coil structure, and there will be a bonding between first amino acid and the fourth amino acid. This is the first. If you take, this is the first amino acid and this is the fourth amino acid, there is a bonding here, hydrogen bonding. Likewise here also we can see, here also we can see. So this coil is stabilized by hydrogen bonding between first amino acid and fourth amino acid. Next secondary structure is beta pleated sheet. So we have seen alpha helix and this is the beta pleated sheet. Here the extended structure in which segments of the protein chain align to form a zigzag structure. In beta pleated sheet we see zigzag nature. Okay, this is the structure of the beta pleated sheet. This is the N terminus and this is the C terminus. Okay, so how these amino acids are arranged? Here we are going in this fashion and it has come back and again it has gone up. Okay, so this fashion is called as zigzag fashion. So the strands are called as beta strands and they are held together by hydrogen bonding interactions between the backbone. If you can see here, this polypeptide is arranged in this zigzag form, right? First in this N form and then U form. When it is aligned like this, there is a hydrogen bonding. We can see with in the form of blue dots, there is a hydrogen bonding between two adjacent strands. Okay, these strands are called as beta strands. The side chains of beta pleated sheet extend above and below the sheet. Now, when here you can see side chains are extending from the beta pleated sheet above and below the sheet. The interactions of the side chains within the secondary structure lead to tertiary structure of the protein. So in the secondary structure we have seen alpha helix and beta pleated sheet. Primary structure is nothing but just the sequence of amino acids. Secondary structure means we are having alpha helix and beta pleated sheet, and then we have to go for tertiary structure, which is nothing but it is due to the formation of interactions within the secondary structure. So coming to the tertiary structure, it is a 3D structure of a protein. Okay, three-dimensional structure of the protein. It involves twisting and folding of the polypeptide chain caused by hydrophobic and hydrophilic interactions between the side chains of amino acids. In both alpha helix and beta pleated sheet, we have seen that there are side chains like R groups. They are projecting outwards from the structure. In both the structures, there are R groups, right? So when there is interaction between these R groups, okay, whether it is a hydrophobic interaction or a hydrophilic interaction, whatever the interaction may be, if there is an interaction between these R groups, that it will result in formation of three-dimensional structure. So the non-polar amino acid chains end up in interior of the protein away from the aqueous environment, while polar side chains appear on the surface of the protein since they are attracted to the aqueous surroundings. So these proteins definitely they will be in an aqueous environment because they will be present inside the cell, and inside the cell there is cytoplasm, right, which is aqueous in nature. So to interact or to resist that aqueous environment or to be present in that aqueous environment, protein will fold in such a way that hydrophobic entities or hydrophobic R groups will be packed inside the protein, whereas hydrophilic or polar side chains will be mm, on the outer side of the protein so that it can interact with the aqueous environment as they are polar in nature. Okay, so here nothing but we have discussed in the earlier slides that R group can be hydrophilic or hydrophobic. Hydrophilic means water loving, hydrophobic means water hating, right? So in this interaction or in the formation of a three-dimensional structure, these hydrophobic and hydrophilic interactions will play a major role. Okay, hydrophobic side chains will be packed inside the on the inner side of the protein, and hydrophilic groups will be packed on the outer side of the protein. This small um, point we have to remember here. And stabilization of the tertiary structure is done by attractive forces between the side chains and aqueous environment. Okay, so whatever the forces are there between the side chains and the aqueous environment, like hydrophilic groups are projected outside, so there will be attractive forces between the aqueous environment and the side chains. Due to this attraction between hydrophilic groups and the aqueous environment, the tertiary structure of the protein will get stabilized. These forces, attractive forces, will give 3D shape to the protein. Interactions in the tertiary structure involve non-polar or hydrophobic interactions, polar or hydrophilic interactions, and salt bridges and disulfide bridges. We have learned about hydrophobic and hydrophilic interactions. There will be ionic interactions. Okay, based on the positive and negative charges, they will interact and they will form salt bridges. And there are also disulfide bridges. Disulfide bridges are formed. These are the covalent bonds formed between amino acids containing sulfur group. For example, cysteine molecules will have this sulfur group, SH group. So between the two cysteine groups, cysteine molecules or cysteine amino acids, disulfide bonds can be formed. These are covalent bonds. So this is the 3D structure of a protein. Here there are hydrogen bonds on the outer side, which are hydrophilic interactions. Here on the inner side, there are hydrophobic interactions, and this is the disulfide bond which we are talking about. This sulfur from one amino acid and the sulfur from another cysteine. There is a bond, covalent bond formed between two sulfurs of two cysteines, which are present on either side of this protein structure, and these are the hydrogen bonds, and this is the salt bridge. This is the negatively charged group and this is the positively charged group. So between these two oppositely charged group there can be salt bridges formed. So this is the overall structure of a protein, that is tertiary structure of a protein. We can see different interactions which are present in tertiary structure of a protein. Now proteins are classified into groups based on their 3D structure. So now just now we have understood that 3D structure or three-dimensional structure, due to different interactions, it is giving some shape to protein. So based on their shape, which they are getting in these interactions, they are of different types. One is globular proteins and the other one is fibrous proteins. What are globular proteins? They are compact spherical structures that are soluble in an aqueous environment. Myoglobin, which stores oxygen in muscle, is an example. Globular means they are round proteins, globule-like proteins, okay, or spherical proteins, which are soluble in aqueous environment. Example, myoglobin. Next is fibrous protein. Fibrous means, by the name itself we can understand, they are fiber-like or lendy or long thread-like structures. They have a high helical content. Helical means they are winding on itself. They are showing some helical helix in its structure. Example is keratins, which is found in hair, nails, and scales of reptiles, and collagen are examples. So first main example for fibrous proteins is keratin, which can be found in hair. This is the structure of keratin, and is showing helical form here. Next, last is quaternary structure. Quaternary structure is made of two or more polypeptide chains interacting to form a biologically active protein. Here, uh, one thing we have to remember is it is not a single polypeptide, right? Here, two or more polypeptides are coming together. Till now, we have uh, we were talking about single polypeptide, whether it is a primary structure, secondary structure, or tertiary structure. We were talking about single polypeptide which is undergoing some changes. While in quaternary structure, two or more polypeptide chains are coming together and interacting with each other, then it will form a quaternary structure. For example, best example for quaternary structure is hemoglobin. Okay, we know well that hemoglobin is an oxygen transporting protein in our body, and this hemoglobin is having a quaternary structure. So here we can see four polypeptide chains of subunits, four subunits. Okay, four subunits or four polypeptide chains are coming together in this protein. It has two identical alpha subunits and two identical beta subunits. If you can see the structure of hemoglobin, there will be four chains, four polypeptide chains, two alpha subunits and two beta subunits. All four subunits must be present for the protein to function as an oxygen carrier. Okay, this hemoglobin, if it has to be functional, it should have all the four polypeptides, two alpha helixes and two beta subunits, two alpha subunits and two beta subunits. All the four subunits are compulsory for the functioning of this protein, and not all proteins have a quaternary structure. It is not compulsory for all the proteins to have a quaternary structure. Okay, so most of the proteins, majority of the proteins will show three levels of structure: primary structure, secondary structure, and tertiary structure. While some proteins, they exhibit this quaternary structure where different polypeptides will come together to function as a single unit. So this is the summary here. This is the primary structure, which is a set of amino acids in a sequence, and this is the secondary structure. Here we can see alpha helix, and this is the tertiary structure, uh, which uh, which is a single polypeptide chain showing some interactions, hydrophobic and hydrophilic interactions. And then here we can see four different polypeptides have come together to form a quaternary structure. So in primary structure, we can see only peptide bonds. In secondary structure, we can see hydrogen bonding. And in tertiary structure, we can see hydrogen bonding, London forces, dipole-dipole moments, ion-dipole interactions, salt bridges, disulfide bonds, etc. And quaternary structure, we can see same as tertiary structure between different subunits. So in this session, we have learned about what are amino acids, what is this, how many amino acids are there, what are the different types of amino acids, and their classification, polar, non-polar, acidic and basic amino acids we have seen. And we have learned about peptide bond, how it is formed between two amino acids resulting in a dipeptide. And we have learned when we can call it as a polypeptide, and when a polypeptide can be called as a protein, and how many levels of structures will be there in a protein, that is primary structure, secondary structure, tertiary structure, and quaternary structure, and what are the forces which are existing in all these levels of protein structure. With this, we'll ending this session. Thank you.